Welcome to Peace of Mind for Pet Parents, the podcast by BrightHaven Caregiver Academy. I'm Gail Pope.
And I'm Karen Wylie. And together we're here to support you in navigating life with your aging or ill pets. We know how deeply you care for your beloved companions, and we're here to offer guidance, understanding, and resources for this meaningful journey.
Each episode, we'll explore topics that address the daily challenges, emotional realities, and choices you face as a pet parent, helping you and your pets find peace, comfort, and joy. Whether it's making sense of a new diagnosis, adjusting to changing needs, or simply seeking a place to feel understood, you're not alone. Thank you for being here with us.
Hello and welcome back to Peace of Mind for Pet Parents. I'm Karen Wylie, here as always with my wonderful friend Gail Pope. Today we're going to take things in a different direction than we have previously. In looking at grief, we're going to begin looking at how we have experienced grief with our pets. Because grief, of course, doesn't start at the moment of death. So how we care about our pets as we move toward that moment of death makes a difference and has made a difference for Gail and me. So we know that our experience of our pets' deaths and the grief that we have felt afterward has often been very different from what we hear other people describe. We don't say that with any judgment at all. We just say it because for a long time, we really haven't focused on why our experience of grief is different. We've come to realize over the years, it's not that we're grieving less, but rather that we grieve differently. It's how we have cared for our pets at end of life that seems to have made a difference for us. As Gail has provided hospice care for several decades with the BrightHaven Sanctuary and all the animals that she took in there, unbeknownst to Gail or me, I was on the East Coast taking care of my own pets and coming to the conclusion that allowing them to go on their own time whenever possible was how I wanted to approach their loss and their death. I didn't realize I was providing hospice care. Gail has talked at various times that she never considered she was providing hospice care because she was just helping everyone live as long as possible and as well as possible. But in reality, we have been providing hospice care for almost all of our pets when possible and allowing a natural transition again when possible. That has allowed us to have more real time to be present both before and after the death of our pets. We feel that has changed our experience of grief. Today, we want to explore a little bit about how grief can actually begin before the death of our pets, how caring for our pets in a hospice capacity can actually change how we feel later and our ability to cope with grief, to grieve differently, and how we carry that loss forward for months or even years further. So with that, Ms. Pope, most pet loss support really focuses on supporting pet parents after the death. There's pretty much an epidemic of what I would call an epidemic of pet loss support therapies and groups out there to help people cope after their pet is gone. I have felt it was very beneficial that most of the time I was doing some grieving before they left. I know you've spoken about that. If I can ask you to speak a little bit more about it now.
I know I've told this story before, but I think for me it was the foundation of me starting to really learn about grief, what it was, and all the different stages of it. I think in actual fact, I had become so focused on my animals living well at all stages in life that the atmosphere at BrightHaven was happy. There was joy, and there were animals at all stages of the energetic life. There were those running around in wheelchairs, jumping on couches. Then there were those reclining in bed, getting closer to the end. But the atmosphere was, for the most part, gentle and joyful. At the same time, I would be focusing on the decline towards the end of maybe one or more at a time in different stages as they lay gradually or still walking around even sometimes. I was so focused on caring for them and living in this joyful energy that I guess the subject of grief didn't even occur to me. This is really the story I've told before when one day a volunteer came and she said to me, it's a little embarrassing. I don't want to offend you, but I'd love to ask you a question. And I think one of the cats had died a couple of days before over the weekend. And she said, here you are, vacuuming, cleaning litter boxes, picking and cuddling and laughing with the animals. I almost didn't come because I thought I should perhaps honor your grief. And I felt awful. It hit me like a wave coming out of the ocean. And I thought, oh my God, am I senseless? Am I cold? What is wrong with me? So that really opened the floodgate for me to start looking back. That's when I realized that basically I'd grieved with the animals before they reached the point of death. I don't want to say used to the idea. I guess it's about acceptance. In the atmosphere we had at the sanctuary, it was all about acceptance of who you are and what stage of life you're at and what help you might need. So I guess following that direction had carried an undercurrent of worry mixed with grief. We always anticipate what might happen. So those thoughts are always in the back of the mind. But I hadn't identified any of that little tangle as grief. Now I hear it referred to as anticipatory grief. Maybe we started that conversation, I don't know, but it's very true. And I think we all do it. Some of us are very aware that we are creating a path and we are grieving with our animals. But a lot of people don't realize that they are spending time grieving whilst loving and caring and getting on with life.
And I imagine part of it does depend on what happens when you receive the terminal diagnosis, whether you're told that there is any time at all, or whether you are encouraged to make an immediate decision about euthanasia rather than maybe that day or in a few days. So I think that is part of it. When I have received difficult diagnoses on my pets, I don't usually take them in as terminal. I don't focus on the fact that they're dying. It's
But
more, okay, I found myself doing this in the car after I leave a vet clinic, where I'm reflecting on the conversation I had with my vet. And it's more, okay, we probably found what Greta's going to die from ultimately. So that's how I begin processing it. I accept
yes,
that whether it's a particular stage of kidney disease or identifying heart disease and wondering where that's going to go and how quickly it's going to go, I don't find myself not jumping to the end. I
right.
focus on what can we do along the way. And I think that when I am thinking about it in that way, where I'm saying, okay, I think we just found out what Greta's going to die from, that is really beginning or allowing yourself to begin grieving. Just acknowledging that to yourself, okay, this is probably what we'll lose Greta from. That's how I start putting it
Yeah.
on. And then there can be many months or even several years with a pet with kidney or some cardio issue, heart issue. But I think hospice allows our grief to start earlier while our pet is still with us. So we may be grieving a little bit every day,
Yes.
but it does allow the grief to fill your heart and your life gradually. I think that really helps us in the end. It's like with human losses, human death, I think we would all say that there is a difference between a life partner, a spouse, a family member having a sudden heart attack and dying, or a car accident and they died in a car accident and they're gone. This morning they were fine and then they're gone. There's a very different experience of that kind of death than
Yes.
there is if we know that there's a diagnosis in play. Because, of course, with humans, if you look at the statistics in the United States, anywhere from 92 to 99% of human deaths are considered natural death. Whereas if we turn the tables to look at how we handle the deaths of our animals, those cared for in veterinary clinics during an end of life phase, 90% of them are euthanized. So we have a totally different experience with our pets typically than humans. But with how you and I have lived our lives with pets, we learned to cope with their deaths differently. I do think allowing natural transition is part of what allowed us to cope differently. Because with euthanasia, there's this thing that's called responsibility grief. It happens anytime you are in a position where you have the authority or you're asked to assume the authority to make decisions about things, especially with pets in terms of literally making the appointment of the day and the time that they will die. That's a really difficult type of grief for
Mm.
pet owners to deal with. I think that's a lot of what we see, but not what you and I have experienced, because our goals were always to aim for a natural transition whenever possible, only consider euthanasia if pain could not be controlled.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
situation made it very clear we couldn't continue down that natural road. How does that strike you in terms of having that goal in mind to work toward a natural transition? How do you feel that has affected your processing of grief?
Oh God, hugely. You probably saw I was writing something down so I wouldn't forget it. This was, I don't know, a few minutes back in your conversation, and here I am left with these words right now, which have been my journey the same as yours, with a slight kink in it, because my focus was and is healing for the highest good of the being, whether for continued life or for transition. So when we would run diagnostics or see a specialist and get what was obviously going to be a terminal diagnosis, then our focus holistically, or holistically with that W in front, was let's make today, tomorrow, and however long we've got as happy and joyful and healthy as possible, which is where the phrase healing for the highest good came from. So we weren't focused on the disease, we were focused on the being. We focused on living with them where they were in that day. So again, the phrase living in the moment. I think once you step away from, is it fear? Yes, it is fear. If you have a terminal diagnosis, the word death sits behind it. That brings the fear level up. And yes, grief is obviously intertwined all the way, because once you know that time isn't just time immemorial, there is going to be it's coming. So that must be where we start to learn about grief. I didn't see anything that was going on in my life as me grieving. However, I had learned a lot about grief. And it's only really, in fact, very recently that I've really become interested in how we work through our lives. That's for another conversation. But I think grief walks with us, along with love, along with many other emotions. It walks with us all the way. Sometimes we're just not aware of it, and other times we're very clearly aware of it. Obviously, with grief, we know that it can almost destroy some people sometimes. It's very sad.
Where they disappear from view for not just months, but years, and needing that time to recover. As I was thinking about us having this conversation today, I was thinking about the fact that so many of our caregiving rituals every day give us an opportunity little by little to be grieving. Whether I think of when I have someone that I'm monitoring, somebody who's on medication, somebody who's on some level of sub-Q fluids or whatever it might be, my day begins with getting my hands on that pet, checking hydration, looking for the pink in the gums, looking at their eyes. And while I'm petting them, in 30 seconds, I can get the information that I
Yeah.
need as their caregiver. Then it's like, they're good. We're going to have a good day. It's just every time I'm pilling them or anytime I'm doing something, there is the awareness that you're providing these things because they're on a different path. We don't know how long that path's going to be, but we are aware that they've got some challenge in their physical life that could take them from us. So in reflecting on it, I just find the opportunity to provide care as a caregiver every single day over weeks, months, or however long we have them is a wonderful healing. It's a healing in advance. Yes, we're grieving a little bit because we're thinking about what it's going to be like when they're gone. That does cross our minds because we love them so much and don't want them to go. I think when we do get to the time of death, to be able to look back and feel like you had time with them, you were able to show them the love you always felt for them, and you were able to do that over time. I just think, and I think I've said this before, I think providing hospice care is an incredible gift that we can give ourselves not just to the pet that we're caring for, but really in terms of how it will support us later on.
Well, you have just done it again. I just
I
done
know.
that word again, and you just talked about that. Is so funny. A little while ago, it just sprang into my mind that it's very much about comfort. Comfort is the word that sums up the end of life process, or let's say the hospice process, because sometimes we tend to think end of life is the last few days, but end of life can be, I don't know, a 6 month or even a year's process,
Yeah.
gradually winding down. But when you think about it, if you read any kind of overview on what is hospice and palliative care, the word comfort will probably be in the first sentence. I think that's when you are brought comfort and joy alongside caring with somebody, a being who is terminally ill, it's as though comfort has grief hand by hand and wrapping it. So, I can picture these little people and one with the arm around, come along, it's okay, you come along with me and we'll all be comfortable together. So, yes, I think the word comfort sums it up. And yes, I think grief is there in baby steps in this kind of scenario. It's there, we walk with it, the same as love.
It's very gradual. And I would say that the comfort care is not just for our pet.
But
We end up providing it for ourselves without that being our goal, because I'm sure everyone's like us. It's like we're focused on them. But by having this gift of time to be with them and care for them, we are caring for ourselves and able to
yes,
care for ourselves. If you contrast that with sudden crisis decisions that either have to be made at the vet clinic or we're told maybe you can have the weekend, but you need to come back. The grief you feel from those kind of situations is dramatically different than the kind of experience you and I have been able to have. You don't have the same kind of emotional whiplash and shock that this is happening, or shock at the moment of death. We do, as you're using the language of letting go, and certainly hospice care does allow us to let go a little bit at a time, which is very different. Then our body is not constantly in this stress and the nervous system is overwhelmed.
you just summed it up for me. Kindness and comfort, it's a two-way street. It's a journey together. It's a two-way street.
It is for them and for us. We'll close this conversation and move forward because we've covered how hospice care can change our grief before the death of our pets, how anticipatory grief can unfold gradually, why and how allowing a natural transition when possible can reduce guilt and some of this responsibility grief. I guess that the thing I wanted to say was that hospice doesn't just change how pets die, but it changes how we humans live with the loss afterwards. For our next conversation, we're going to take a look at how grief continues when our pets physically die and how we proceed after that point. So thank you for being with us for this conversation. We hope you'll return for part 2 of this continued conversation about grief. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Peace of Mind for Pet Parents. We hope today's episode has offered you support and insight as you care for your aging or ill pets.
Remember, it's not just about the end, it's about living well at every stage of life. To continue your journey with us, explore more resources at BrightHaven Caregiver Academy's website, brightpathforpets.com, where you'll find guides, assessments, and a caring community of pet parents like you.
Until next time, may you and your pets find comfort, connection, and peace in every moment. Take care.